Hello. Welcome to this little live stream. Thank you for joining. Please say hello in the chat box. Tell me that you can hear me. That's important. Um, two other questions. Where are you joining from? And where are you at in your mini journey? Uh, you're a newbie, never collected before. You're a seasoned collector, and you're here to just listen about miniatures and maybe learn something more and new. Hey, Michigan, good to see you. Hi, Amy. Or as Amy is, somewhere in between. Um, and I think to some extent, we're all just somewhere in between. Uh, I think when you get to be sort of that seasoned collector, quote unquote, at least in my mind, um, I think you're ready to just have a museum, right? I mean, I think there's just so many levels. But so when I think of sort of that line of where you're at, never had a dollhouse, never collected before, all the way up to, I'm a full on collector, then, that just tells me you're ready to put your stuff in a museum. Does that make sense? Hey, Carolina, South Carolina, good to see you. Erin, welcome to the world of miniatures. Welcome to your new obsession, is what I like to tell people who are just just getting into miniatures. We have another minute before we're going to start. Please do say hello in the chat box. I love to read these afterwards. If I can't get to see them now. So if you're just joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell me a little bit, just tell me where you're from and where are you at in your journey. Thank you, Michelle, for confirming you can hear me. Your dog is out of control. Yeah, you're all muted. Don't worry. Don't worry. um, Tell me, so where are you joining from? And even after I begin the presentation, just if you can populate that screen, I'd love to know where you're joining from and where you're at in your uh, your journey into this world of miniatures. So we are, up at the top of the hour. So I do like to start on time. So thank you for joining, folks at home. Do tell me where you're joining from and where you're at in your miniature journey. Just begun collecting minis, and you bought a typeset false starts, but still, you keep trying. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. But thank you guys for joining. I'm really, really excited you're here and to spend this early summer Thursday with me to talk about my favorite topic. And I think some of you too, miniatures. We love them. We're going to talk a little bit about why we love them. But at the end of the day, who cares? We just love them. And it doesn't matter why, but it's kind of good to just understand it. Um, but thank you for joining this webinar. I'm gonna keep the chat box open. I will try to refer to it as much as I can through this little webinar. We're gonna go around 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Do ask questions if you have them, and I'm gonna try to get to them, as many as possible. And after this is over, if you have a question, I love getting emails and texts and stuff. So please do reach out afterwards. I'm gonna go ahead and just put in the important links in case you didn't see them. Those are some important links to my social media, to some of the things I'm going to be talking about in a second, which is kind of like the latest happenings in the mini world. Okay, let me go. So if if you don't know, I'm going to talk a little bit about it in a second. Hey, Cancun is in the house. Nice. Um, if you don't know me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, I'm going to introduce myself in a second, but I host a podcast called Meet the Miniaturist, which is a way to introduce artisans, makers, hobbyists to the mini world. I also host something called Miniversity, which is kind of a way for people to tap in this podcast to learn about miniatures. Thank you for joining. If you just joined, please say hello in the chat box. So my latest Meet the Miniaturist interviews included Judith Kessing from the Netherlands. She has finished this extraordinary dollhouse that you're seeing right in front of you. She's working on several others, and we learned all about her journey, where she's at and where she's going. G'day, Guy. Hi, Ken. So check that out. Again, the links are in the chat box to all my previous Meet the Miniaturist podcasts. And you can pick and choose, watch them all, binge them. But it's a great way to meet makers and hobbyists. And so this is Jeff Swim from Doodler's Workshop. And he has this incredible workshop filled with the most amazing tools. And if you love miniatures, one of the aspects of miniatures is making miniatures. And so this guy knows what he's doing. We got a tour of his workshop. We got to learn all about the different processes behind how he makes some of these pieces, including this beautiful stackable folding tables that really fold. I found him at one of the recent shows, and I had to have that piece, and then I had to learn all about how he makes them. So that's another Meet the Miniaturist you can find on in my YouTube channel. You can go there. Link is in. I just sent you the link. I'm going to send it one more time, just in case for those who are just joining. Thank you if you're just joining. So I'm going through some of the my latest Meet the Miniaturist podcast, where I get to interview makers and artists and hobbyists and collectors on this podcast. We get to meet them. We get to hear about their journeys and what they're doing and how they do it and all that stuff. So it's a great way to sort of tap into the community and learn all about what people are doing. And then we also have Gosia Sachadalska from Poland, who makes some of the most beautiful foods. And we're going to talk a little about the importance of food and the category of food in the miniatures world and in miniature collecting, because it happens to be one of the more popular categories. No surprise, it's food. We love food. And then when you have miniaturists like Gosia, who makes some of these beautiful, she makes not only foods, she makes flowers, she makes meats. We're going to talk about, anyway, go see that. She's amazing. You know, she's an educator by trade during the day. But this is what she does on her off time, but she does it so beautifully and so well. It's amazing. And then finally, and probably most importantly, this is Taylor. Oh my goodness, I don't have his last name. It's a long last name, but he is from House of Videon Miniatures, relatively new to the miniatures world, and he really strikes that amazing. Okay, so important thing is here. I'm going to be interviewing him on this Sunday at 4 p.m. Again, link to go and register to watch this live Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Taylor he's a graphic designer by day, and he taps into all of those skills to build these amazing structures, dollhouse, room box, storefronts. But what's amazing that I really found that I wanted to really tap into and get folks to meet him, is he's amazing with a woodcutter. I don't know if you guys know about that, the strip wood cutter. Please pop that please pop it in the comment section if you know what that woodcutter is that I'm talking about. He's amazing at cutting strip wood and building trim and wood molding and window trims and flooring, and he just blows me away with his design skills, and then his use of color is amazing. So we're going to meet Taylor on Sunday. Please do join for that if you can. It should be awesome. He's a graphic designer out of Brooklyn. He's kind of really, really cool too. He's young and cool and all that kind of stuff, and talented. So that's the big thing. Hey Jay, good to see you. If you're just joining, thank you. Please do pop a hello in the comment section and where you're joining from. And then finally, before I get to the webinar, what everybody's here for, I do have an estate sale coming up. I don't have a start date, but it will be sometime early to mid-July, next month, couple of weeks. So look for that. What's amazing about this estate sale is that this is the collection of a woman from Japan who's looking to downsize. She has an enormous collection. This is just one small, no pun intended, part of it. And what's amazing about this collection is not only it's a really great assortment of high-end artisan pieces, but there are a number of pieces in here from Japanese artists, which not so easy to get pieces from Japanese artists unless you go to the shows, which we're going to talk about the shows a little. We're going to talk about the shows as a really great place to tap into finding and building your miniatures collection. So again, there's a link I sent you the link. You can, I will be sending out more updates on when the sale is going to start. There is a gallery preview of some of the pieces that are in there. And once and last time, I'm going to put the link in the bio so that you can go see. There is a gallery tab. You can go look and check out and see some of more of the pieces that are going to be included in that sale. So with that, let us go right. Oh, I don't like when it starts. Sorry. Sorry. Don't look. Don't look. Okay, now you can look. So let's talk about why we're here. And again, thank you for being here on your Thursday night. But we're here to talk about how to build an awesome miniatures collection. So I asked a little bit about where everybody is at in their miniatures journey. You might be just starting this thing, this obsession, but we always want to learn more about how can we grow our collections, how can we build upon them, how can we find those treasures that are going to help grow our collections. So fill them with high quality, really special pieces. So ultimately, so that we can really get the most delight out of them and the most enjoyment out of this hobby of collecting miniatures. So that's what we're here to do. I will talk a little bit about me. We're going to tap into just a very, very short time about the history of miniatures, just to ground us and to talk about how we got here to this world we're at right now of miniatures collecting. We're going to talk also a little bit about the category itself and the growth of the category over the last, let's say, 10 years or so. Again, to help ground us to where we are today, I'm going to touch upon just some, and only a few of the best collections that I know of on the planet. No surprise, most of them are here in the United States, which is probably the biggest market in the world for miniatures. Again, no surprise, a lot of people, high income, demographics are all just right. And then we're going to get into it. Why do we collect? What makes a fine miniature, which is really one of the ways that helps to build a really, really good collection, is tapping into that, what we call a fine artisan quality miniatures. And one of the ways we do that is we look at what are the popular categories. What are the things that drive us most? What are the things the artists are making, ultimately, that make them available to us to buy to help build our collections. Where do we go to find these miniatures? We're going to talk a little bit about what defines a really good collection, and then we'll kind of like end with, all right, now you have this information. What do I do with it? So with that, and then of course we will wrap up and do Q&A. But like I said, I'm going to try to answer questions as they come through. But a little bit about me. I have always been fascinated with miniatures. I had a dollhouse growing up, but life happened. I went to a communication school. I had a marketing career for a long time, but I've always been interested in this category. And one of the things that really, really um, got me into it was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. How many of you are familiar or in that sort of age category? Of remembering Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And it wasn't necessarily the land of make-believe, although there were puppets and there were miniatures in there. But if anybody remembers, there was a time, at times during some episodes, Mr. Rogers would go into his kitchen and he had models of the structures in the land of make-believe. He would have them on his kitchen shelf and he would pull them down and he would put them out on his table in the kitchen. And that's how you knew you were going into the land of make-believe that episode. It was those little models, the little treehouse, the little castle, the little trolley. That's what got me started on this bug. But life happened. I went away to school. I had this whole other career, but it wasn't really until about 10 years ago I decided to make a break, get out of the corporate marketing world, and I started a business. I had a shop for a little while in where I live, which is in Westchester County, New York. So I had a shop for a few years, which really helped. Hi, Eleanor. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. So the shop really helped in my head frame what it was I was doing. So the physical space really helped to sort of get me started. I didn't have it very long. I had a gallery space for a while. So it really what got me, what really I love to do, I mean, I love to sell, but I also love to promote. And as I mentioned, I do have this Meet the Miniaturist and Miniversity series, which helps me promote the world of miniatures. So, like I said, while I sell miniatures, I love to promote. So, I do speaking tours. I have a connection to the Hudson River Museum here in Yonkers, where I am from, and there's a fabulous dollhouse on permanent view there that I really recommend you guys see. But ultimately, my sweet spot is selling and reselling estate collections in online through my eBay store, and I also have a site on invaluable.com. So my sweet spot is reselling collections and promoting miniatures. And what I'm doing today is really all about promoting miniatures. Um, so thank you for that question. Can you visit your shop? So my shop is no longer around, unfortunately. So I wish I had it. I loved it, and I miss it terribly. I miss the physical space. I miss seeing people, um, and so but I get to connect with people this way online and a much bigger audience. So, I'm still getting fed. Does that make sense? I get fed. But I call myself an unapologetic miniaturist. I don't I don't feel like I need to explain anymore actually what I love to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means because miniatures right now are on the upswing. For the last 10 years or so, we've seen an increase in interest and awareness of miniatures as a hobby. And that's really, really good to see clearly because that actually helps all of us as collectors. It helps widen the pool of items that we get to buy and see and people to learn from if we're makers. So it is definitely on the upswing. Um, and you know, I consider like the late 80s, 90s, even all the way up to the end of the 90s, sort of like the golden era of miniatures. And after that, there was kind of like this dark period when the internet started growing and the mom and pop shop selling miniatures started to wane. And so there was this kind of this dark period where nothing was happening. But social media has really helped to kick it in and make things happen. And then, you know, sadly, COVID came along, but COVID helped really electrify the category and the hobby because people were home, they needed something to do, and a lot of people discovered miniatures, both makers as well as hobbyists. So that's kind of good news. But where did this all begin? Let's get ourselves grounded. Miniatures have been around forever, guys. I mean, there were tiny treasures were created by the ancient pharaohs, and even before then, they were buried with these tiny treasures because they couldn't take it all with them. They couldn't fit it all in the pyramids, so they miniaturized a lot of the things. And the kings and pharaohs, they took it with them, and they felt like those pieces came with them in the afterworld. It wasn't until really the Renaissance era when we started to see what we all know as the dollhouse. But they didn't call it a dollhouse; they called it a cabinet house back then. And these were basically for women who wanted to show off their full scale objects, which they didn't own at the time because they were women. But the only way they did have any kind of ownership was miniaturizing their fine china, their silver, their furniture, their waiting staff, making dolls. And so that's really the beginnings of what we call dollhouse. They called them cabinet houses, and they also called them baby houses. Very interesting. And some of these are some of the most elaborate and gorgeous and high quality and artist crafted structures and miniatures in the world. This is actually Petronella Ortman's um, eh, dollhouse, cabinet house, which is on view at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And a lot of this all began in the Renaissance era in Europe in the 1500s, 1600s. But again, you know, fast forward to maybe the 1940s, we start to see the commercialization of miniatures. This is a tin house or maybe a house with graphics. Some of you this might look familiar. You might be seeing them in garage sales. Now you fast forward to the 1970s, you start to see the commercialization and the manufacture of dollhouse kits. These are around even today. Companies like Houseworks, which just celebrated their 50th anniversary. So really, this is kind of what we're seeing. This is where we are today with the dollhouse miniatures world, and how it's evolved, let's say. But if you want to look at some of the finest collections in the world, I'm just going to share just a few, just to give you a little inspiration, just to give you a little grounding. And it should be aspirational as well, because these are some of the finest miniatures on the planet, in my opinion. And one of the best collections in the world happens to be the Thorn Rooms. How many of you out there know of the Thorn Rooms and have been to the Thorn Room? So please pop that in the comment section. I want to know where you're at. And I love to hear, I've never heard of them and I've never been to them, because that means that maybe I shared something that you didn't know, and maybe you'll go see it and you'll love it. Anyway, so Mrs. Thorn lived around the turn of the last century, and she miniaturized architecturally accurate rooms in 1/12 scale. It's kind of one of the first ones to do that in that scale. And these are, like I said, architecturally accurate. She engaged some of the finest miniaturists on the planet to make the pieces in these rooms. And she was a visionary in terms of scale and sizing and proportions, and most importantly, light. Look at this English cottage, which is a room box, probably, I don't know, 2 feet wide, to give you kind of a good indication of the scaling on this. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, it's a little, you really can't see it because my logo is in front of it, but that's a hinge that is attached to the door, which closes. It's a windowed door to help protect the room box. That's a hinge, and that just gives you an idea of what the scale is of that room, because of course it looks absolutely new. I mean, absolutely real and full scale, but until you look at that tiny uh, uh, latch, you don't know it's a miniature. Karen, I'm so glad you are now indoctrinated into knowing about the Thorn Rooms. Here are just some of the few of the other Thorn Rooms. There are 69 of them. 100 of them were made, but there are about 70 of them that are at the Chicago Art Institute. 10 out of 10, highly recommend going to see these. It's an awesome exhibit. And I would even recommend going several times, because you can't see it all and get it all in, because there's just so much to take in. And like I said, one of her really, really impressive skills, Mrs. Thorne, who was a socialite, by the way, which, allowed her to sort of be able to do this. She had the money, she had the time, she had the interest. Her background is really more interior design, and her whole objective of making these rooms was really to tell the stories of architectural periods, and she couldn't do it in full scale. It just was too much, too big. So she miniaturized it. And that was her objective. They really, really are some of the most amazing small scale rooms on the planet, and some of the best made miniatures uh, ever. Even to today, by today's standards, these are some of the finest miniatures and finest architectural representations of miniatures in small scale. And I'm going to go back to the light again, because she was amazing at light. Look at the light seeping through the window on the left. Yeah, I know, Susan, this is another rabbit hole, but this is such a joyful rabbit hole. So not only is there her use of light, but every one of her room boxes led somewhere. And there again, you can see the hinge in the upper right-hand corner of this photograph. They led somewhere, or allowed your imagination to feel like this was leading you somewhere. And she was just so amazing and so artful and so ahead of her time, to be able to pull these together, and so many of them. But to move on, this is actually Queen Mary's Doll's House, which is at Windsor Castle in the UK, which just celebrated its 100th anniversary and year. This was a gift to the people from Queen Mary, and it is on permanent view at Windsor Castle. Another really amazing example of fine art miniatures, some of the best on the planet. And I'll end with this, more local, Maysville, Kentucky. This is the Kathleen Savage Browning Miniatures Collection, which is on permanent view at the Maysville, Kentucky Museum. I haven't been there myself. It is on my list. I will hopefully get there at some point. But this, Kathy, Kay Browning has been collecting miniatures her whole life. And this is what I was talking about. When you get to a point where you have this fabulous collection, this is what you do with it. You show it off and you put it in a museum. So definitely recommend checking her museum out, checking out her social media, because it's filled with beautiful photographs. And like I said, this is just a few. There are so many, and I just wouldn't ever be able to get to all of them in one little bit of time. Anyway, any questions before I go on? Her museum is, well, I've been at the Maysville Museum. Nice. It is. Thanks for the rabbit hole. Yeah, it's worth the visit. I mean, I'm only assuming. The other thing that she's doing, Kay Browning, is she's offering classes on miniature making. So it just makes it that much more of a proposition to make it out there, make a whole week out of it. Okay, so any other questions before I move on to why we collect? And the reality is, we collect because we love to, but and really, there are different reasons, but some of the reasons, you might look at. Well, you look at the Renaissance era, and that was all about not necessarily play, but that was about educating maybe the younger women or younger girls how to run a household. It was also to show off. And a lot of ways, we still look at collecting as a way of showing off. Maybe it's to ourselves because no one else really cares or gets it. But showing off is a thing. But it also, it might also be about the hunt and the search for the right miniature, the best miniature. So there's also miniatures are filled with art and design, and so this miniatures taps into that aspect. For hobbyists, who are makers, it's about using your hands and getting your mind wrapped around a project with learning new ways of doing things, new skills, learning tools and processes. Psychological, I could do a whole webinar on the psychological reasons why we love miniatures. Hey, Tulsa Tiny Stuff, how are you, Oklahoma? Good to see you. And then, I mean, finally, and probably most importantly, they bring us joy. If you discover miniatures and you're into miniatures, there's a special kind of joy that comes with it. And I kind of feel like it's our own little hidden thing. I don't spend too much time trying to convince people to, I mean, I can show them. I can't encourage them to love miniatures like we do. But we are lucky. We are really lucky that we have this passion. And so, the joy is one of the reasons why we collect, I think, at the end of the day. And I'll also say that there is a social aspect to miniatures. This is a very social, uh, 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 category. The online community, I'm going to get into that in a little bit, is very welcoming, very supportive. So I think the social aspect plays into this as well, because there's a shared interest that, most people just don't have. And so when you have that amongst some peers, and when you meet somebody who likes miniatures, you're like, you get it. So it helps. Okay. Let us talk about, some of the more popular categories in small scale. So when you think about growing a collection, one of the things you really is a nice thing to know is what are some of the more popular categories. Because when you look at the more popular categories, I'm not saying look at that to drive your interest. But at the end of the day, the more popular categories means more artists are making pieces like that, which means you can find more pieces like that. Does that make sense? So it's just something to understand and focus on. So the more popular the category, the more availability of miniatures will be for you to become part of your collection. So when we look at the more popular categories, that includes things like pottery. This happens to be John Almeida. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work. It's incredible. Furniture is another wonderful category. This happens to be a mid-century modern version of this by Fernando Setchian out of Spain. Um, there are multiple styles in the fine art miniatures category, from Victorian to Georgian to modern, but you can find almost everything. Modern is probably a little less of a popular category, so it's a little harder to find really, really well crafted modern miniatures. But furniture overall is probably one of the biggest categories. Accessories, I mean, I chose this because I just love this piece so much, but accessories is sort of kind of an all-encompassing category. Fashion, of course. When you think about the more popular categories are going to be the categories that are more most relevant to us, because again, what our artist is going to make is what is endearing to them, and so fashion and clothing and accessories and bags will be probably more available to us to help build your collections. Fine art portraiture. This is Johannes Landman out of Canada. His work is incredible. You will find really, really high quality landscapes and portraiture in the miniatures world. I mentioned fashion a little bit, but I needed to mention Valeria Bonoma. Her work is incredible. This is Julie Steiner. This is sort of falls under the fashion, but also the textile category. Pillows and blankets and uh, hand knit throws and carpets and rugs. This is Julie Steiner's from Ridiculously Tiny Things. She's immensely talented. She's amazing. She's kind of a newcomer. Her work is incredible. This is Kiva Ford out of the Chicago area. Does beautiful hand blown glass. Goja, I mentioned her a little. Before I had her on my podcast. She's very, very talented. She works in collaboration with another miniaturist in Poland. They work in tandem, and one does sort of like I don't know how they break it up, but they work collaboratively, which helps them make more stuff, which I'm all about. So she does flowers and foods and meats. She actually does meats too, but this is actually by Kim Fairchild. She's an amazing miniaturist out of the Midwest. She's a scientist by day, and at night she goes home and she makes the most amazing food miniatures. And she doesn't sell her work often, so it's you really just have to enjoy it. Casey Todd from Smallish Miniatures falls under sort of like the toys trend category. And these are her Ugg boots. I discovered her when she was offering Birkenstocks in miniature, and it just blew my mind. Blew my mind. Christina Hamp is another miniaturist out of, I believe, Spain or Germany. She's definitely European, and her food miniatures are just incredible. And then finally, this is House of Nunu out of Japan, who makes. I don't think this guy. I think it's a guy makes anything that's bad. There's just nothing bad. So, the question is, where do I start? Maybe if you are a newbie, you really just have to start, and you need to just start where, and figure out what speaks to you. And that's sort of like a hard concept to kind of understand. How do I know what's speaking to me? Just pick what you love. Start there, and go from there. But just make a decision. I love food. I'm going to collect foods for a while. There are no rules in this world, by the way. There are no rules. All right. Any questions before I go on to what makes a fine miniature? We're going to talk about what makes a fine miniature. Well, all my slides are starting out at the last. I don't know why. So what's important to know here is that a really amazing collection um, includes doesn't always only include fine miniatures. I think a really good collection is a balance of manufactured miniatures, um, as well as artisan crafted miniatures and what we call fine miniatures. Um, Good quality overall is the important thing to note, and balance at the end of the day. And importantly, it's going to go back to this is what makes you happy. But one of the things that makes a miniature a fine miniature is happens to be how it is made. What are the materials that are being used? How is it? What are the processes by it's getting late here in the East Coast. But how it's being made? What are the process? So, for example, this is a hand thrown pottery. This happens to be Craig Roberts. His name is that's his real name, but he goes by the Harry Potter. That's his real AKA. So he turns his pottery on a wheel, a real wheel that turns. He uses real clay and he uses tools to shape the pottery. So, very important is how something is made and what the tools are. Materials are very important too. So, as I mentioned, clay, he uses real clay for pottery. This is actually I call it a comfy chair, but it's an easy chair. It's a tufted leather chair. I think it's by Lynn Weisenant. Uh, but it's a real leather chair. That's real leather, like butter, actually. So that's what's really amazing. It's a beautiful, soft leather, and this is one of my famous my favorite pieces in the whole wide world. Um, but so this is actually a hand painted commode. So again, going back to how something is made, this is made of wood. It is hand painted. It is probably depicting a historical image. So it's the authenticity that's very very important when discovering and figuring out what makes a fine miniature. And to some degree, the level of difficulty on how to make that miniature comes into play. To make it just that much more special. So this happens to be a screenshot of glass being hand blown and I'm not so familiar with hand blown glass, so I don't know about the words, but the shaping, the sculpting, this ultimately becomes a crystal vase. So it's using traditional techniques with real materials to come up with a final miniature. Also, back to level of difficulty, this is a hand painted uh, portrait by Natasha Beshenkovsky, who is an incredibly talented miniaturist. She's been around for a long time. I don't know if she's making miniatures right now, but this is an example of one of her portraits, which is just an amazing hand painted piece, and I love it. I love it. This is porcelain. It is the tiniest porcelain, hand painted, hand fired piece that I've ever seen. So back to what is it that makes some of these miniatures fine? It's how it's made. It's how it's crafted, how it's put together, using traditional joinery. So this happens to be an extending table made by Rohit Khanna out of India. All of those leaves come out and they work together. The table expands, it contracts. So everything works. He uses real hardwoods with traditional wood, which has beautiful grains, which what you would find in a traditional wood object or piece of furniture. This is an example of just going back to like the level of detail on how some of a fine miniature is made. This is an example of a drawer from a Walter Shooter sideboard, and just notice the dovetailing on the drawers. That is what joins the pieces together. This is what we call traditional joinery. Those dovetails are individually probably cut with a jeweler's saw and then fit perfectly to create a joint that holds the drawer together. If you're looking for a fine art miniature, it doesn't always have to have all of these elements, but it's kind of really nice if it does. And this is an example of beautiful hand hammered copper by the incredible team of Jay Gitsan out of Chicago. So look for them. I don't know. They may be winding down too at retirement. They're not making as much, but they do beautiful work. Question about the artists shared today. I will try to put a list together of the artists. So that's a good question. That's a good one. I'm going to work on that. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's us. I think we're almost wrapping up. So we have talked about um, why we collect, what makes a fine miniature, and now let's talk about where we would actually go to find some of the best miniatures. Let's see, and then we'll wrap up with the Q&A. Q&A if you have any questions. But as you imagine, some of the best places to find miniatures are going to be first and foremost. Uh, I mean, look, you can find miniatures online for sure. Probably it is the hold on. I want to speak to you directly. No, hold on. Hold on. I'm back on the stage. No, so what I wanted to say was, at the end of the day, the online world of miniatures is very expansive. It's very vast. You can find anything online that you want, but there's no better way to shop for miniatures than to head to some of the better miniature shows out there, which includes the Chicago Tom Bishop Show, the Guild Show in New Jersey, the Philadelphia Show. So these are kind of like these are the best places to go to find high quality miniatures. But there's also an important aspect of meeting the artist who made them, asking questions about them, seeing the miniature up front, close and personal, asking how it was made, asking when it was made, getting to help you make decisions about what you want to bring into your question. Very hard to do that online unless you already know the artist, which brings me back to go to the shows. Go to the shows and visit and the meet the hold on, you can hear me, right? Hold on. There we are. You can go and meet the artists at the show, and I think that's a really important aspect to all of this, to really building a great collection. Um, so, like I said, go to the shows, meet the artists. Yeah, and the shows that I mentioned are probably some of the shows that have the highest quality, the highest number of high quality artists with the greatest number of high quality miniatures. So those are going to be the shows. That's not to say you're not going to find really high quality miniatures at some of the local shows where you might be visiting from. You're just not going to have the volume, which gives you the opportunity of scale, no pun intended, of pieces to choose from. Because at the end of the day, we have to choose. We have finite budgets, right? Most of us. I'm just saying. So you want to maximize your opportunities, and you can do that by going to some of the bigger shows. Is really, and what makes a really good show is, like I said, the number of distributors, the number of artists, the number of tables, the number of international versus local vendors. One important aspect of the shows that I just mentioned is they bring artists from around the world, which opens up the pool of artists and the quality of materials. It just makes it a better experience overall. I will say book early because these shows do sell out, especially lately over the last several years. If you're traveling, book a room, buy your tickets. I recommend buying the preview tickets. Always good to get in early. So those are some of the things that make a really good show. Location is really important. You want to be able to fly in and out. You want to also maximize the time if you are traveling, and that means being able to take classes. Maybe the New Jersey show, you get to go to New York City and spend some time. You want to make it more worthwhile if you are traveling to some of these shows. So for sure, that is the show circuit is my recommendation for the best experience and all around way to help build your personal collections. Um, but like I said, online is great. eBay is a great place to buy and to shop for miniatures. Etsy, the big difference between Etsy and eBay is Etsy is more handmade by the artist, and eBay is more resold and pre-owned. You can go to garage sales if you are ambitious and you know what you're looking for. It can happen. You can find something. You can also go. There are a few more magazines. There are still magazines left. Um, so you can find miniatures in magazines. There are a couple of them, like I said. Um, but actually, I just wanted to say, in terms of like the going to the shows, talk to the dealers, talk to them. They love to have to for folks to ask questions about their work and to be interested in their miniatures. So that ties into the social aspect of all of what I've been talking about, the value of this hobby. There is a social aspect to it that really is a big part of it. So let's talk about defining a good collection. Okay, let's talk about what is it that I said before. Balance is really important. Not everything has to be awesome, awesome, awesome. It's really about pulling all those pieces together of the things that you love. Because at the end of the day, it's your collection. You're looking at it. So it's finding those pieces that are going to bring you joy and putting them together. They don't have to make sense, or they do make sense. It doesn't matter. It's really what is driving you and making you happy at the end of the day. Um, so yeah, that makes a really good question, a really good collection. That's really it. It's what makes you happy. So any questions on that before I go on and talk a little bit about, okay, now I love collecting. I'm a budding collector, and now I'm interested in doing more. I'm a collector already, and I want to build on that. So let's talk about what that means. I think, like I mentioned, the social aspect is unmatched in the miniatures world, and especially online with the social media groups. I have found personally that some of these community groups are amongst the most inclusive, welcoming, um, non threatening. I don't know if that's the word. They're very, very safe spaces. They're very well run. In fact, I run Mini Friends, which is one of those four up there. But these are some of the larger mini groups that I completely encourage you to go. If you're not on Facebook and you're afraid of Facebook and you have been off of it for a few years, this is a good reason to get back on, and just stick to these groups, because they, like I said, they're very welcoming. You can learn so much, and then people share just about everything, and that becomes inspirational, becomes aspirational. People are very open to answering questions if you're a newbie. So I think the social media, Instagram, Facebook are really great. Pinterest are really great places for you to join the communities, learn about miniatures, help to give you the information you need to build your collections. So with that, I would like to thank you for joining today. And let's see if you guys have any questions before we let you go home. I went a little bit over. I would usually go around 40 minutes. The Facebook mini world, yes, is amazing, Angela. I agree. And like I said, it's a safe space, especially for the folks who might be like, I don't want to go on Facebook. It's a scary place. If you go on Facebook, just stick to the community groups around miniatures. They're very well administered, and the administrators take no bull. So there's almost no negativity. So any other questions? I'm going to work on that list of artists, Talisha. That's a really good idea. I think the next time I do this, I will have that prepared so people can go and, oh, what was that guy, who made the flowers? Where do I find that? So any other questions before we wrap up and I let you guys go home? Please do join. I'm going to put one more time my links so that you can join my Meet the Miniaturist on Sunday at 4 o'clock with Taylor, who's so talented. I'm so excited to talk to him. Thank you, Angela. Thank you guys for joining today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. If you have any questions, let me know offline. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you again for joining. I'm really, really happy that you all came. Thank you. Okay, bye.